Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HR Verdict Podcast. I am your host, Renee Trotman, serving as your HR virtual advisor and counsel. I am here to educate, inform, and help you mitigate risk on all things HR. I know it's been a while for those of you who've been a part of the HR Verdict podcast community since our intro launch a while ago. We thank you for your patience as we've been preparing to come live with you with new branding, new content. And so here we are, and we are ready to get into it. So remember, I am here to be able to provide you with the opportunity to get advice and counsel on things in the HR sector. This is going to be informative for both employers, organizations, and employees in supporting and ensuring that you are aware of all things that you need to be aware of. So I will provide you with the HR verdict on the matter in each episode based on the topic area that's been selected. So let's get into it in our first revamped and renewed episode. So we're going to kick off, and earlier this year, you heard me kick off a preview of a topic around the ADA, also known as the Americans with Disability Act. And I let you know that I would be back with more information in a part 2 or phase 2 on expanding upon what we spoke on in that preview episode, if you will. And we were talking a lot about reasonable accommodation, the interactive process, and what that all means for you as an employer, as a people manager, as an employee. And so here we are back with what is an expanded version or part 2 of the Americans with Disabilities Act and how you navigate this. So let's talk a little bit about this. This is a reasonable accommodation. You heard me talk about the need to have, as employers and people managers, the ability to engage with employees who may have a disability and making sure that their rights as employees are not infringed upon, and that you as an employer, as an organization, have policies, processes, and practices in place that are going to support employees. And that was deemed through the interactive process as a reasonable accommodation. So what's a reasonable accommodation? A reasonable accommodation, as defined by the Department of Labor, also known as the DOL, is that it is a modification or adjustment to a job, a work environment, or the way that things are done in, let's say, the hiring process. So that is 3 key areas of the employee life cycle when you think about this. Let's say that someone needs support with a modification of their job duties. Let's say that there needs to be an adjustment to how someone is able to fulfill their jobs within the organization based on a disability. Or potentially there is a work environment, a computer, someone needs a standing or raising desk, maybe they need ergonomically designed equipment, whatever that is. There's so many things that are needed that employees may reach out to their organizations for, and employers and organizations, you need to be on top of it. Why? Because if not, you open yourself up to liability and risk in the fact that you may not be following or being compliant with the law. Yes, I'm talking about compliance and the law. Why? Because all this wonderful money that you are making as an organization, it will quickly go out the window on lawsuits and claims and mediation and attorney's fees in the event that you are not equipped. So let's talk about this. A reasonable accommodation under the law is really in place to support three aspects of employment or the employee or an employee during their life cycle. So let's look at what those three things are. It's one, ensuring equal opportunity in the application process. So you are having a recruitment process as an employer or an organization. You have an applicant tracking system. You have an interview process. Are these things, or let's say, let's not forget, maybe you have assessments or tools to assess skill sets and personalities. Have to be very careful about those things to ensure that they are not negatively impacting an employee or a candidate, I should say, in your hiring application or recruitment process. Very, very important. Uh, Also, we want to look at a point two here, which is enabling and supporting and for qualifying individuals with a disability, the need, the support, the aid to perform the essential functions of a job. Ding, 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 ding. Very important thing that you heard me say. I'm going to say it again. Let's repeat. To perform the essential functions of a job. So I'm going to insert here a pause moment for employers and organizations that get nervous about, oh my goodness, what does this mean? Does this mean I'm going to have to do everything that the employee wants? Why do I have to do this? This is going to create so much conflict or trouble. Here is your saving grace. This is where the law puts in a caveat for you. Yes, you, the employer, on how to ensure that you have some protections in this process. So, this is about, again, supporting those individuals that qualify under the ADA with a disability that needs a reasonable accommodation, to support them and help them in performing the essential functions of a job. So, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that someone can just ask for and receive a reasonable accommodation and still not perform the job to the expectations of the job description, the role profile, the roles and responsibilities that you have outlined. This is here to support them. This is saying this employee has a disability or a need, a support need in order to meet their job. And by you, the employer, meeting them in the middle through a reasonable accommodation, that their performance, if it was being impacted before or was not able to fully meet the potential, this is here to help them. So, employers and organizations and managers, that one was for you. I hope you took notes. And the third one is going to be about allowing employees with a disability to enjoy all the benefits equally and privileges of employment. So, those that may not have a disability have the natural ability to enjoy a lot of the things that take place in the workplace around the working conditions, about meeting some of the roles and responsibilities without potentially support. And so, this is about an ability to create inclusivity and to be able to create equity across all employees in your organization, and to ensure that everyone has what they need to meet the needs of their roles and responsibilities to be the performer that you need for your organization. Quite a few things, right? So, here's a couple of things I want you to think about. Managers in organizations, I know, and people managers especially, I know sometimes this can feel daunting. It can feel frustrating. It's like, what do I do? This is an extra task, but I don't want you to think about that, right? Because what if it was you? What if you needed this, right? This is about being able to support. So there's a couple things I want you to think about here. As a people manager and as an organization, I have been doing HR for over 20 years, and I have supported so many organizations and managers in this realm and this space. And one of the biggest things they say is, Renee, oh, this is frustrating. Why? Oh my goodness, it's going to be such a headache. This is a hassle. Or I hear this term a lot that, oh, this is special treatment. And how many times managers, people managers, have you even heard other members on your team say, why do they get that privilege? Why is that for them? They don't seem to be getting treated the same as everyone else. Well, it's not special treatment, and I don't want you to view it this way. This is a benefit to all employees. So it is about ensuring, again, that we are creating a level playing field for all employees in the workplace to have what they need. So I want you to shift your thinking. I want you to shift your focus. This is not about special treatment. I want you to understand that this is about supporting and providing what employees are entitled to if and when applicable. Let's talk a little bit about the why. Why is this important? Employers, organizations, people managers. I am here again. What did I say? To be your HR virtual advisor and counsel on all things HR. And I'm here to educate, inform, and mitigate your risk. So this is why I am giving you the why, so that you can have a better understanding and appreciation about shifting your thinking, shifting your focus, and making sure whether you are a small business that's just scaling and growing, whether you're a medium-sized organization, or whether you're a large organizations, it's ensuring that everyone has an awareness of the duty and obligation that you have as an organization, as an employer, as a people manager, to ensure that you are fulfilling the responsibilities and the duties that are upon you. This, again, is to mitigate the risk to your organization. It's allowing you to be what I, as an advisor, always say to organizations, that you want to be proactive versus reactive. Say it again. I want you to be proactive versus reactive. You have so many other things that you need to be worrying about as a business owner, as a executive, as a manager, just as an organization as a whole. And these are some things that help you proactively ensure that you are equipped and prepared for before they arise. And why is this important to understand these pieces of information? Because your HR teams that maybe you've established internally, that you've promoted people internally that may not have this knowledge and expertise, maybe you've internally promoted through internal mobility, individual contributors who are now people managers. Maybe you've had people managers who have been doing this for a long time and are excellent at what they do in leading and driving their teams, but they don't necessarily have some of the awareness to also not only manage the risk from the products and the services and the goals that they're driving, but the risks that are associated with their people, their teams. And so this is to help managers, people managers, HR teams, organizations to ensure that your employees' rights and their entitlements, because this is the law, right, that they're not being infringed upon. And for employees, I'm coming to you, employees, because this is some nuggets in here for you too, from an awareness standpoint. I want you to know your rights so that you know how to raise your hand, raise your voice when there is a need that you have as it relates to a interactive process through reasonable accommodation under the ADA. And this is not for you to take advantage. So, I'm going to stop you there, employees that say this is a free for all, because you heard me let managers and organizations know where the law protects them. It is not a free for all. This is about making sure that you are able to have this when you truly are in need. Okay, so there's a little bit in there for both the employers, the organizations, and employees as a whole. So, how do we navigate this day to day? Okay, how and why and when? We're talking about all these various aspects. So, employers, you, yes, again, you have a duty and an obligation under the law to engage in an interactive process. Let me refresh you on what the interactive process is again. This is about being able to have dialogue, conversation, interaction, and engagement with employees who have either come to you directly or indirectly through your observations. You have identified that there's possibly a need for support. Okay, that you are making sure that you are engaging to have the conversation to see what needs may or may not be there, right? Because ultimately, your duty and obligation is to open the door for conversation. The duty and the obligation of the employee is to then take that opening and be able to articulate and engage around what they need. Okay, so it is a two-way street. Keep in mind that the law is very tricky here, and you heard me just mention something moments ago, and it notes that employees do not always have to directly and verbally state that they have a disability or a need for an accommodation. Hear me again, an employee does not have to intentionally or verbally state that they have a disability or a need. Why am I highlighting that for you, employers, people managers, and organizations? Because there are oftentimes in the many years that I've been supporting organizations and managers that they have missed key cues, clues, and triggers that may have on its face indicated that something was there in terms of a need with an employee. Let's use a quick example that I shared in the other video when I introduced this. Let's say that you have an employee that's been with you 10 months, 12 months, almost a year. They have been consistent in performance. They have really not given you any challenge. They've showed up on time. They've been a solid performer. And then all of a sudden, out the blue, you're seeing that there's some attendance issues. Maybe it's not severe, but it's uncommon. Maybe their performance, their engagement at work has dropped. In your one-to-one conversations, in a one-off conversation, it's being able to identify and visually capture and see that there may be a possible need there. Why is that important again? Is because how you, as the employer, people manager, organization, can put yourself at risk by not being aware of this is that I've seen people and managers potentially say to HR, or just if there is no HR, I'm going to put this person on disciplinary action or I'm going to terminate them. Slow down, people managers. Take a moment because there's a lot to unpack there. You've heard me say that this ADA interactive process, reasonable accommodation, is very tricky, very complex. So, what do I want you to be aware of here is that don't just think that because no one has said anything to you, when there is a possibility that you have potentially been aware or you are aware through observation or visually that there could be a need, that you're pausing and you're taking a moment to engage. Why is this important? Anytime you get to a place where you've potentially terminated someone by skipping some of these pause moments and engaging through interactive process, you have potentially infringed upon an employee's rights, interfered with the support that they need and their rights under the ADA, and now you have missed an opportunity to reduce your risk by engaging in a simple conversation. So let me tell you how this works for now, you employers, on your behalf. Let's say that you do observe something that seems off and you engage, or someone has reached out to you for a concern or a need for support around a disability or a medical concern or a life altering situation, medically, physically, that's altering their day to day life activities, and you open that door for conversation. How can I support you? What are some things that we can do to ensure that you have what you need? If that employee never comes back to you after you've opened that door, you want to document that, you want to notate that, you want to re engage at least one or two more times. And if they choose or elect not to come back to you, you have done your part. Why? Because as you heard me earlier, this interactive process and this reasonable accommodation that may ensue from this is to ensure that there is an opportunity for that individual to receive the reasonable accommodation so that they can meet what? The essential functions of their job. So that's why this is very important. It's for you to really ensure that you have the additional awareness of what your duty and obligation is as an employer and as an employee, to know that you are also responsible for following up. Also, for employers, another thing that's very important for you to be aware of is that just because when you engage in this conversation, let's say someone says, well, I want my accommodation to operate this way. I want to be able to take off Thursday, Friday, and on the days that my provider is saying that I need for this particular situation. Or they may say, I need X, Y, and Z desk raiser to raise my desk. You don't have to necessarily provide them exactly with the raising desk that they're asking for. You can find a equal or closely equivalent raising desk that may be more affordable but meet their needs. You may have to engage and say, well, Thursdays and Fridays don't work for the business, but we can give you Tuesdays and Wednesdays, right? So this is where there's also a protection for you employers, where you have the ability to be able to, again, interact, engage in the conversation to be able to land at a reasonable accommodation that works for you. It's about creating win-win solutions for both the employer and the employee. Why? This is going to impact your employee engagement. This could potentially impact your retention. And as I said earlier, from a compliance standpoint, if not followed, potentially put you at risk of a claim or a lawsuit if this is not followed in order. So I know that was so much there. I've unpacked a lot. I mean, I could speak to you for hours about all the various nuances, elements, and layers to the ADA, the interactive process, and reasonable accommodation. But here's a couple of things that I want you to be aware of as we begin to wind down. I want you to be vigilant. I want you to be aware, and I want you to be alert. I want you to stay in tune. I want you to be intentional in watching for cues, clues, and triggers that might indicate that your employees may have a need. I want you as employees to not be afraid to lift your hand for help and raise your voice if there is support that is needed. Why? Because, and I'm going to just be very transparent on this, not every organization, not every HR is fully aware, educated, and equipped to navigate all of this. And I apologize to you for that. So I don't want to be naive and say, or just paint a perfect picture that you go to your manager and HR teams and it's just going to be easy breezy. I know that you may run into some difficulties. So let's say that you've raised your hand or your voice for support, employee, okay? I want you to know where the law also layers protection for you is the moment that you do raise your hand for support, you are now putting the employer, they are deemed as being on notice under the law. And that requires them to then engage in the interactive process with you. So if they don't, they are already missing elements of ensuring that your rights Yes, your rights and your entitlements are being followed. Okay. So let's say that you do raise your hand and you raise your voice. Okay. And let's say that you feel like ever since you said something that they are uh, um, potentially treating you different, right? Or you feel that they're using it against you, right? You feel that there's a shift. There are protections in the law for that, and they keyword, be liable for retaliation. I want you all to understand as employees, I know that the trend now is dropping these buzzwords, retaliation, hostile environment. But what you have to understand is buzzwords are buzzwords, and then there are keywords that actually align to the law. And so you could potentially have a cultural, meaning workplace culture, issue and breakdown, which makes you feel that the environment is hostile, but that doesn't mean that it meets the standard in the bar of the law. Oh my goodness, that is a whole nother episode and topic. I'm going to put a pin in that one so that we can expand upon that. But I want you to know that there are protections for both you as the employee and the employer and organization in this process. So today we have talked about the interactive process under the ADA, the reasonable accommodation, how it's defined. We've talked about employers and organizations and people managers, what your parts are. We've talked to you, employees, about what your parts are and where the law provides provisions for both of you, right? So here you see that there is balance. One doesn't outweigh the other. It is about being aware, educated, and informed so that you, whether employer, organization, or people manager, you know how to navigate, and employees, you also know how to navigate. So that was a mouthful. So that is my HR verdict on the matter for today around the ADA, the reasonable accommodation specifically as a result of the interactive process. So, as we wrap up today, I want to remind you, people managers, prevention is better than cure. Oh my goodness. Prevention is better than cure. Proactiveness versus reactiveness is key. So I want you people managers to remember to be intentional, strategic, and methodical in how you manage these pieces. Your roles have impact. So in the event that you, as a people manager, a organization, let's say that you are having a challenge with navigating and you find yourself in uncertain or uncharted territory of how to navigate this as an employer, as a people manager, organization, or maybe as an individual. You may have not had or may not have HR at your organization, or potentially you just feel like you're not getting the neutral support or individual support that you need, and you need external advice. I am your HR virtual advisor and counsel. So I want you to take a look at the bottom of the screen, visit our website to contact us, send us a form, give us a call, email us so that we can provide you with support. I've also placed our email address here, inquiries at the hrboutique.info, linked below. And again, our website, www.thehrboutique.info, so that you have all of our contact information. Again, we are here to support you. So remember, that is all for today. My name is Renee Trotman, and I am your virtual HR advisor. And welcome to the HR Verdict Podcast. Until next time, we will be in touch. Thank you for joining.